There are women who cannot distance themselves from certain men, even knowing that they do not care. They love too much, give too much, and even so, they remain invisible to him. But what you do not know yet is that this has nothing to do with love. It is a silent, deep, invisible addiction that Nietzsche and modern psychology help us understand. And today, you will discover why what she really desires is not him, but the sensation he awakens within her. If topics like psychology, philosophy, and the darkness of the human soul interest you, subscribe to the channel now. The more she loves, the more he becomes invisible. But do not think this happens by chance or because he is special. What is at stake was never him. It is the emotional reflection he awakens, an old trauma, a wound that is not healed, the absence of an emotionally distant father, or the repetition of painful stories with different names. She's not addicted to him. She's addicted to the unfulfilled promise, to the illusion that if she is enough, she will finally be loved. This illusion is cruel because every effort, every dedication does not bring her closer to genuine affection, but pushes her further from herself. She loses appetite, loses peace, loses identity. She spends hours analyzing every word, every gesture, trying to decipher signals, predict movements, control something that was never under her control. And he remains confident, indifferent, aware that she is going nowhere. Some men understand the power of absence. They realize that being unpredictable generates obsession. That absence has more impact than presence. They learn, perhaps unconsciously, that appearing and disappearing, giving and withdrawing attention, creating tension, keeps the addiction active. This is not love. It is manipulation. It is a dance between pain and hope, and the more she dances, the more she believes she loves. True love is not an exhausting dance. It does not leave the soul tired. It does not demand self-denial. It does not turn every glance into doubt and every gesture into obsession. True love fills, completes. It does not empty. But for her, what she feels is the opposite. She became addicted to pain because pain, at first, seemed familiar. That which was familiar, even destructive, brings a false sense of security. What she feels is not love. It is withdrawal. The body and mind respond to the emotional pattern like a chemical addiction. Every silence from him, every absence, activates brain regions linked to desire and reward, as if it were a small dose of drugs. She becomes conditioned to wait for the next gesture, the next contact, the next glance, and the more she waits, the more her nervous system pleads for dopamine. She does not realize that she is trapped in a cycle that begins with pain and ends with temporary relief. Every return from him after an absence brings a fleeting pleasure, a momentary comfort that reactivates dependence. The more she tries to break free, the more her body reacts, trembling, seeking contact, desiring what was never fully given. The illusion becomes stronger than reality. This emotional addiction settles silently, almost invisibly. She believes she is in love, that she loves, but in reality, she's trying to fill an old void. He was never the center of desire. What she seeks is the sensation he provokes, the possibility of finally being recognized, finally chosen, finally enough. But the promise is never fulfilled, and absence becomes habit. She gets lost in interpreting every gesture, every message, every silence. The mind works incessantly, justifying, reinterpreting, imagining intentions. Every absence is felt as withdrawal. Every presence, no matter how small, as a reward. The intensity of pain and pleasure is confused with emotional depth, and dependence grows without her noticing. The invisible addiction is not visible to those observing from the outside because there are no clear signs of abuse or violence. It manifests in the silent collapse of emotional well-being, the erosion of identity, the loss of autonomy, and constant anxiety. She becomes a prisoner of a cycle that seems loving but is destructive. And the more intense the relationship, the harder it is to realize that what binds is not affection, but dependence. Now, the challenge becomes real, recognizing that what she experiences is not love, it is addiction. That the man who seems charming is only the trigger, the mechanism that keeps the brain trapped in the cycle of intermittent pain and pleasure. And the decision before her is profound. Continue feeding the addiction, giving in to the familiarity of pain, or begin to detox, accept temporary solitude, and rediscover the emotional freedom that has always been inside her, waiting to be reclaimed. When a man becomes an addiction, his presence is not constant. He comes and goes, gives and withdraws attention, leaving traces of pleasure and absence. This unpredictability creates intermittent reinforcement, a psychological pattern that conditions the brain to respond with intensity exactly when the reward is uncertain. It is the same mechanism that keeps someone trapped at a slot machine, playing repeatedly in hope of winning something that is never guaranteed. She is not addicted to him. She is addicted to what he awakens within her. The excitement that arises after waiting, the small dose of pleasure that temporarily relieves anxiety and loneliness. It is an emotional roller coaster, where pain mixes with relief, and each peak of pleasure reinforces dependence. The intensity of the experience is confused with emotional depth, and the cycle perpetuates. Each absence of his triggers withdrawal. The body reacts as if deprived of an essential substance. The mind creates justifications, interprets signals, revisits every gesture, every message, searching for proof that he still matters. The more he is absent, the more the brain pleads for reward. And the longer the reward delays, the more anxiety grows, increasing desire and reinforcing addiction. His presence becomes a drug, brief, unstable, unpredictable. Every smile, every gesture of attention, every word spoken at the right moment releases dopamine and reinforces the chemical bond that traps her. But this reward is always partial, always insufficient, keeping the mind and body stuck in the cycle of expectation, giving, and frustration. She confuses pain with love, absence with intensity, anxiety with passion. The body begins to adapt to the emotional roller coaster, and what once brought satisfaction is no longer enough. Every gesture of affection needs to be more intense, more frequent, more unpredictable. The mind and body become addicted to the peaks, and the void left between them becomes unbearable. The more she tries to distance herself, the more she feels the need for proximity. The desire for contact becomes almost compulsive, as if her own survival depended on him. She cannot see that emotional withdrawal is what keeps dependence active, and every attempt at freedom is sabotaged by the brain, conditioning her to return to the cycle of intermittent pain and pleasure. This addiction is not only emotional, it is physiological. Brain regions linked to pleasure and reward are activated similarly to addiction to substances such as cocaine. But unlike chemical drugs, this addiction is socially accepted, even romanticized. Movies, music, and books celebrate women too in love, but no one talks about the devastating effect of emotional withdrawal. Obsession settles silently, eroding peace, identity, and relationships. Friends, goals, and moments of personal pleasure begin to lose importance in the face of the need to monitor his signals. Every gesture, even minimal, becomes a subject of compulsive analysis. Life revolves around the cycle of pain and reward, and addiction becomes central to her existence. She believes she is in love, but in reality, she is trying to fill an old void, conditioned by childhood wounds and experiences of rejection. He is not the center of desire. He is the trigger that activates the reward system, generating the sensation of existing when he looks, even if for brief moments. His presence brings relief, but also reinforces dependence and the cycle of suffering. And so, she finds herself trapped in a roller coaster she cannot control. Each absence increases the intensity of desire. Each return reinforces the illusory hope of connection. The mind and body are conditioned, addicted to emotional highs and lows, confusing intensity with true love. The challenge now is to realize that this roller coaster is not passion, it is addiction. And only awareness of this cycle opens the door to freedom. The paradox of contempt is simple and cruel. The less he offers, the more she gives. The less he sees, the more she desires to be seen. The more he disdains, the more she bows. It seems irrational, but the unconscious does not operate with logic. It operates with repetition. There is something familiar in this dynamic, something that echoes old wounds, experiences of rejection and emotional deprivation, often experienced in childhood. She recognizes, even if unconsciously, the pattern, the silence of an absent father, the constant criticism of a narcissistic mother, the feeling of never being enough for someone important. When this man appears cold, distant, unpredictable, her body reacts. He activates old wounds, reopens doors to the past, and she enters again, driven by a hidden desire to rewrite experiences that marked her deeply. But it is not love that moves her. It is a search for emotional justice. She wants that this time someone chooses, sees, and stays. She wants to repair the feeling of abandonment, prove to herself that she can be loved, that she is finally enough. But reality is harsh. He will not change. He will not offer what she projects. And yet she continues investing emotional energy, time, and hope in something that does not exist. Some men intuitively understand this paradox and exploit it, consciously or unconsciously. They learn that absence creates obsession, that contempt generates giving, and that the cycle of pain and pleasure keeps the bond active. Every partial return, every minimal gesture of attention, strengthens dependence, just as an emotional dealer keeps a client trapped in addiction. Her body and mind begin to operate according to this cycle. Every absence causes anxiety. Every return causes temporary pleasure, and she begins to confuse these highs and lows with true love. The brain releases dopamine in moments of relief, reinforcing the behavior and creating a physiological need for return, even if the object of desire does not offer genuine reciprocity. This dynamic is devastating because it diverts attention from her own life. Friends, goals, hobbies, self-esteem, and inner peace begin to be neglected. Time and mental energy focus on the cycle of expectation, giving and frustration, creating a silent obsession that consumes without being noticed, making it increasingly difficult to see reality clearly. The paradox of contempt also explains why many women insist on relationships that seem impossible. The less they receive, the more they try to compensate, believing that with effort, persistence, or unconditional love, they will finally change the situation. But what is trapped in this cycle is not a healthy relationship. It is deep emotional conditioning, the silent addiction that confuses absence with challenge and rejection with intensity. This awareness, when it arises, is painful. Recognizing that one is not loving, but addicted to intermittent stimuli and controlled absence, hurts. The pain of lucidity is intense because it reveals that what seemed like love was actually an unconscious repetition of patterns of deprivation, emotional training to beg for attention and affection that will never be fully offered. The path to freedom requires courage. It requires facing one's own addiction, naming it, and accepting that it is not cured by his presence, but by experiencing his absence consciously. The paradox of contempt only loses power when she stops investing energy in the illusion, when she realizes that he is not the reward, but the trigger of the emotional addiction that needs to be broken. Freeing herself from this cycle is not simple. It is painful, requires emotional withdrawal, self-knowledge, and reconstruction of her own identity. But by breaking the paradox of contempt, she discovers something that addiction never offers: clarity, peace, self-mastery, and the possibility of building relationships based on genuine love, respect, and reciprocity, not on the repetition of pain and intermittent reward. Now you understand the hidden truth. What seems like love is often addiction. What seems like connection is often disguised absence. And what keeps you trapped is not him, but the reflection of the wounds he awakens. If you want to learn to recognize these cycles, regain your emotional freedom, and no longer lose yourself in relationships that drain your energy, subscribe to the channel now, activate the bell, and follow our videos, because awareness is the first step toward true power over yourself. These 2 videos in front of you are not here by chance. And what if everything you believe about yourself is just a reflection of someone else's gaze? Click now on one of the videos next to this one and start breaking that mirror. You will have to risk the click. So, which one will you choose?